Welcome to Divisive Issues, a comic book podcast where we talk about comic books. I'm Ryan Lynch.
I'm Sly Crappa.
I'm Phil Maverickis.
And I'm Darryl Steffen.
What book are we doing today, guys?
We're doing Spider-Man Rain.
Wait, like rain, like when it comes out of the sky? Like
No, like R-E-I-G-N.
You almost forgot that G.
Yeah, I had to think about it spelling.
Like rain, like a horse, right, guys?
Yeah.
This is a very special book because this is another book like Cry for Justice that Ryan recommended to me a long time ago, and I was like, Ryan, what is your opinion on this? Why would you think this is good?
And much like Cry for Justice, when I read it for the show, I was like, I have no idea what I liked about this.
This wasn't this. You know, you guys are saying how shitty it is, though. I don't think it's that shitty.
There's a couple things.
I'm gonna defend this, I guess, throughout the whole episode because I didn't think it was as shitty as you made it out to be.
There's a couple things I actually like.
As I keep reading more and more comics, I'm like, this is so sad, but I'm finding things to put below Nemesis.
No, you put this below Nemesis?
I think this might be the worst book, other than Unfunnies. Unfunnies will never be
You're a
top.
fucking liar. You're a fucking liar.
Like I said, this is a book I think it deserves. Like Ryan Phil always says, why does this book exist? I don't think this book has to exist. I would say this book, out of all of them, deserves to exist the least out of all of them.
Deserves? Who are you to judge?
I don't agree.
I think this book is like a really big try-hard, and I would describe it best as if Shadow the Hedgehog wrote a Marvel book.
Oh, yeah, it's a good comparison.
Mary Jane.
So the premise of this book is...
Okay, hold on. One thing I want to say that I realized we never say, if this is your first time listening, this is a very explicit podcast.
Oh, and we do spoil, too. We do spoil.
Yeah, and we used to put, like, warnings like that, and then we just stopped, assuming everybody knows, and now we're like, hey, check out the show. Fuck, shit, fuck. So just, and also...
Well, we have an explicit tag on there.
Yeah, we have an explicit tag on iTunes and all that stuff, but we also, like, it gets sexy sometimes, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah, good listeners.
I don't know if I'd ever call it sexy.
Yeah, it's not something you get aroused by.
Okay, so this is Spider-Man Rain. It's a 4-issue miniseries by
Kaare Andrews.
Kaare Andrews, I guess. Kaare.
All right, so I didn't know this guy even existed until yesterday when I read this comic. I hate him now. But basically,
Typical Sly.
he's a really big Frank Miller wannabe. And he's also a director. He directs really shitty movies like Cabin Fever 3. Like, who the fuck? Why?
I had read this story years ago, and I guess liked it. And then I read his Iron Fist book, because I'm a huge Iron Fist fan, and I made it like 3 issues. And even me, Mr. Positivity, was like, this book is really not for me.
So, what do you think so bad about it? The writing, the style of it, the fact that it's a ripoff?
The fact that it's a ripoff. This book has no original ideas.
Okay,
I think this book doesn't deserve to exist.
We'll get through the writing, but we should talk a little bit about the art.
Oh.
Kaare Andrews draws and writes it.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, Darryl, you don't like the art?
My least favorite art, too.
Really?
Out of all the books. I think that's one of my big things. Like, I have to like the art, otherwise I'm really not going to like the book. And I do not like this art. I think it can be good in a couple of frames, but most of it is just...
I think the problem is that it's in like more abstract frames where
we
it's
should
like
give the
not...
premise of this book before we...
Okay, yeah.
Sure,
You're right.
Sure.
All right, so the premise of the book is Spider-Man is old in the future, and basically, if you read Dark Knight Returns with Batman, where he's old and he gets back into crime fighting and everything's dark and gritty, this is Spider-Man meets Dark Knight Returns. Too much Spider-Man meets Dark Knight Returns, in my opinion.
It's a dystopian future, so it's like, New York City is now a police state, and heroes are gone.
The news media works for the state.
If it's a post-apocalyptic, not post-apocalyptic, but like if it's a dystopian future cliche, it's probably in this book.
Yeah.
So what were you saying about the art, Phil?
I was saying that I went back and forth between really hating the art and kind of liking it, because some frames where it was more either abstract or some of the action frames I liked, but whenever it went to like detail on people's faces, I feel like even just a few pages into the first issue, there's just a random guy's face who looks like he's deformed and he's not supposed to look that way.
Here's the thing. I actually like a lot of his design choices, and I like a lot of his action scenes when it's more stylized, but I do agree that there's some panels that I was like, oh, any goodwill that I have, this is bizarre.
The backgrounds of some of the pictures, like especially on the first page, I really don't like this weird, like, 3D...
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
...looking bump map textures. It's so weird.
I have to bring that up because this is why I don't like the art. I do think he has some really nice pages. Like I think the covers for a lot of them are great.
Oh, I do love the covers.
My big thing though is he is aping Frank Miller's art, Frank Miller's style so badly.
Yes,
like,
especially in the last pages with the main villain.
Yeah, and also like Darryl suggested, like Darryl mentioned, there's like a 3D thing going on, just like the Dark Knight Returns sequel, Dark Knight Strikes Again. For some reason, this has a really it had made a really weird choice to use a lot of digital stuff. So it's a lot of like photos pasted onto the backgrounds, a lot of 3D CG imagery, a lot of and it doesn't mix with the more gritty Miller-esque inks.
I guess that's why I like the action scenes, and then like the still lifes were just like really weird to me. I guess that's probably why I didn't even think of it.
It's just a weird choice to have. I've never seen. I don't think I've ever seen a comic that does the 3D backgrounds, CG backgrounds, and has it look good. It's always looked bad to me.
It's just jarring the difference between the background and the actual drawing.
What made it a bit worse for me is I read the first issue of Dark Knight Returns right before this, and I was like blown away by Miller's style. It was really good for that.
So you've
issue.
never read Dark Knight Returns before?
No, I haven't. That's like the one Batman book that's always talked about that I haven't gotten
We
around to
have to
reading
do an
yet.
episode on it soon.
Oh, we will definitely do an episode.
Oh, okay.
And the fact that you haven't read it is I didn't know that you hadn't read it, and your review of this book is really, I'm excited to hear it then. So now, one thing that I want to point out, Dark Knight Returns came out in 1986. This came out in 2011.
No, I thought it was 2006 or something.
It is 2006.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's still huge though. To rip them off 20 years later.
Yeah, and that's why I want when this came out. I remember when this came out. I remember thinking, why now? Like to make a Dark Knight meets Spider-Man in 2006, like so long after these books have already been done to death before already, and like that style is no longer popular. That heavy narration style is no longer popular. It's just such a weird choice.
But it wasn't like were other books directly ripping off of Dark Knight Returns? Because I feel like if it directly ripped off of it back in the 80s, like
I'm
late
talking
80s.
about how my initial reaction is when I read it now for the first time. I'm like, wow, this is just a direct ripoff. But I was thinking like this is just another book in that style. And even for that, I thought this book was 20 years too late.
I mean, there is a like that is a fad where there are most characters have a book of like, what if they were old and retired and coming back?
Yeah. Usually they're bad.
I feel like you can get away with it though, like 2 decades.
Oh, no,
later,
some of them-
'cause then it's like, oh, it's a throwback. It's sort of like the news anchors' names.
But this felt like there was no spin on it. Even when it was coming out, there was no spin. This is just Dark Knight meets Spider-Man.
Yeah, there's kind of a spin.
All right. Well, you know what? We haven't talked about the plot at all.
It's kind of a web spin.
Yeah.
Let's start talking about what's going on. And wait, who's target audience?
Okay, if you like Dark Knight Returns and you don't want to read any comic ever, only Dark Knight Returns, read this comic because it's literally Dark Knight Returns meets Spider-Man.
No, if you like Spider-Man, but you also wanted to see what would happen if he lived in a dystopian future where he had nothing left to live for.
If you want to read Dark Knight Returns, literally this fucking ripoff of...
Dark Knight Returns pulled its pants down and photocopied its ass.
So like if you like Dark Knight Returns and don't want anything different, you want the same shit over and over again, read this book.
It's not the same. It's worse. The art's worse. The plot is worse.
It's like a Xerox copy. It always gets phased more and more you copy, and this is a fucking Xerox copy of Dark Knight
It's
Returns.
not. It's a middle schooler like tracing over the Dark Knight Returns.
Whatever, use whatever analogy you want.
All right, let's get into the book. Let's get into the book.
This
Okay, so issue 1. It's... I know Sly's gonna get mad because I'm going on the first page. But it's a spider in a spout and a bunch of like white... It's supposed to be water, but it's like this thick white liquid washes the spider away. And that's super relevant for...
It's more like gray. It's like gray.
It's like chunky.
Yeah,
And that's... We'll get to...
Yeah, I don't think they were thinking this deeply.
Well, we'll get to why that symbolism is important later on. So,
what's the narration as he's being washed down the spout?
Itsy Bitsy Spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the rain, R-A-I-N.
But they don't. Yeah, why not? Why not?
And
Just
washed the
make
spider
a
out.
reference there.
They should have. They really
They
should
should've.
have.
So, there's a bunch of kids that are graffitiing "Where did you go?" And then they yell "Rain." What is rain in this world?
The police.
The police, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these
Again, it says dried out all the rain. Could have done a cool transition where the kids yell "rain" as dried out all the whatever, but didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I requires cleverness, Phil.
Yeah. So there's like these big like jackbooted goons that are the police of this era that are chasing away these little kids. These kids look like probably like 12.
Yeah.
And they're like really aggressive. They're shooting them with like beanbag guns and tasers, and like they're hyper violent. And you immediately get the feel of like this is the dystopian future that we've seen in a million movies and a million books. And
once the police start beating up kids for minor offenses.
Yeah. And it's not like the
bad.
Teen Titans issue where it's a computer making everyone beat up kids.
It's also interesting that it's transitions from that Itsy Bitsy Spider into the narrative talking about nursery rhymes and how they're actually teaching kids that the world is pain and to watch out for, you know, they keep this theme for the first two, but they basically about how nursery rhymes are actually warnings. They're not like happy things.
Yeah.
And also, the narration is very much like Dark Knight Returns, where it's very self-important narration boxes.
A yolk-filled body broken on the
Yeah.
floor, a starving dog, an old woman in an empty cupboard.
If you've read any comics, you've seen this a million times, and this
Yeah.
is not above the par.
Yeah. And then it cuts to a guy that looks just like 60s Peter Parker and redheaded...
60s Mary Jane.
Yeah, and 60s Mary Jane. And
Those are the people I said look deformed.
okay.
Yeah, when I saw this guy, I'm like, oh no.
That's when I was like, oh, the art might be shit.
And he's in a flower shop, and he's a real piece of shit. So at first I was like, is this... I don't remember this. Is Spider-Man just an asshole? And he's complaining that they got the wrong flowers from this florist and the wedding's ruined. And the old man that's selling them the flowers is basically like, I'm sorry, we can fix it. And they're like, no, you ruined the wedding. Fuck you. And there's this guy just standing right next to the old man screaming, Parker, in his face.
Yeah, and it turns out, twist, Parker's the old man and not the guy who looks like Peter Parker.
Yeah. And the guy fires him, says like, you know, the wedding's coming out of your paycheck. These lilies that you're taking home are coming out of your paycheck. And Peter's trying to talk, and he's just like, please, I have rent. He's like, that's not my problem. He's like, my wife, and he's like, get out of here. And Peter basically steals the flowers, and you just immediately feel bad for this guy.
Yep.
Yeah, he's an old washed out Peter Parker.
Yeah, and he's got like a big white beard, and his like face is all like mushed in.
I think that's just the art.
Yeah. And then it cuts to Peter's inner monologue, which is very Peter Parker.
He was in the monologue the entire time, I think.
What?
Yeah, I think it was his.
It's hard to tell because these books always have. It's always hard to tell because there's so many narrators. It's hard to tell who's talking, but you could tell Blue is Peter and this is Peter narrating.
But now it's in Peter's voice, where
Yeah.
he's like down on his luck, the Parker luck kind of thing. And he's walking, and one of the kids that we saw before smashes into him, and he drops the lilies on the floor. And he's like, no, it's okay, the flowers are okay. And then the rain goons like stomp on the flowers.
While it's raining.
And he's just really sad. And
It's always raining.
it's always raining.
I'm just going to clarify, it's always raining in this story.
Yeah.
It's also he keeps talking about how he needs to bring the flowers home to his wife.
Yeah.
That's important. He has like promised to bring them back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard to tell. So there's like,
Basically, Peter gets in the way of the rain goons as they're beating up these kids.
it's also like the cops all wear masks.
Yeah.
And it's like-
it's a really like it's a dystopian future to the point of almost unbelievability. Like it's crazy that I could so much more easily believe the world of 1984. Even though it was like even though it was worse than this one, like this it never presents itself as a believable world.
This one is really bad.
Yeah,
And it's like it's very blatant that these people are in a dystopian city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the rain goons like start beating up these kids, and Peter gets in the way and start beating him up too.
Yeah, and the one thing that I just want to point out is the kids, they're like beating the shit out of this kid, and he's just like, what's your name? And he says Ben, and it shows Peter's face, and you're like, oh, it's going to be an Uncle Ben parallel. And then he's like, your full name, and he's like, Ben, take it, middle name, Dover End. And I'm like, oh, bend over and take it. Okay, so never mind, it's not an Uncle Ben parallel.
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, like Sly says, Peter tries to break it up, and the cops beat the shit out of him too. And Peter just basically watches this kid get the shit kicked out of him, and doesn't do anything to stop him because that's the most Peter Parker thing you can do. And that was sarcastic.
Okay, I was like, what Peter have you read? Are you the writer of this book, Ryan? You never read a single Spider-Man comic?
Yeah. And then to really drive home that point, because nothing's subtle, there's another little kid that is like, you just let him take him? How could you? There's no one to help us. No one. And
The girl that says that is actually a central character in the story.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think that might be the real problem that plagues this whole story. Like, you're saying, like, it sucks because of the art or the fact that it's so close to The Dark Knight Returns. But really, this story could have been a lot better if they knew what subtlety was.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the plot ideas and plot elements are actually, I thought, pretty cool. But the fact that they were like, this is what we're doing. Just listen to what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like, there's
So have you read Dark Knight Returns?
I read it when I was 14. So
Yeah, so if you want the subtle version of this, read Dark Knight Returns.
And Dark Knight Returns is it's the subtle version of this, but I wouldn't call it subtle.
I know it's not. I'm not a huge fan of Dark Knight Returns either, but that's what happens when you have a ripoff. Like, they're just imitating the things that he found cool about the story. He's not imitating the actual substance of it.
Yeah.
It's like you point out before, where it's like you can make a good play on words with rain. It's like that's something that I think Alan Moore would do.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's like it was looked over, we know what kind of book we're in for. Where it's like
Yeah.
it's direct and given
Yeah.
to
And
you.
even an Uncle Ben parallel is the easiest thing to do in Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, it's a butt sex joke. And you're like, oh, okay, cool, way to go. So then it cuts to, just like in The Dark Knight Returns, the media just being like, these are the politics of the time, guys. And
Daily Bugle.
yeah,
And they're all like smiling, happy, annoying faces like in Dark Knight.
yeah. And the one thing I want to point out, I say that all the time. Drink, I guess, if you're playing the Divisive Issues drinking game.
I'm sure there's tons of college kids listening playing the Divisive Issues drink.
yeah, all gathered around, all like 20 of them in a room.
The reporter's name is Miller Jansen, and Frank Miller and his inker, Klaus Jansen. And who's the other one? Like, Var Morgensen? I don't know what that means.
Var Jones?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, whatever. And they just...
So it's the Daily Bugle News. Now they have a TV channel,
Yeah.
not just the newspaper. That's what Spider-Man used to work for, right?
Yeah.
And they're just throughout the whole book as just being like, this is the politics of the time.
And their faces are just so cartoonishly, like, annoyingly cheerful.
Yeah.
Like, one guy looks like he's, like, grimacing the whole entire time.
He looks like Jimmy Olsen just got Botox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when Ryan says they're talking about the politics of the time, it's like obviously state propaganda right immediately right in your face. They're like, the government would protect us from anything. We're going to have to give up our freedoms for security. Aren't you guys happy?
It's like a shitty version of the guys in V for Vendetta.
yeah.
They're talking about putting up a laser powered protective barrier around the city to keep like any foreign intruders out.
And it's called the Web.
Yeah.
Yeah, with two B's.
And everyone's happy with this. Like, this is a fucking giant laser field around New York that will block out everyone from coming in. And like, and he says like he's not even like a president or anything. He's just head of New York City.
He's the mayor.
He'll put us into other places. So it's fucking insane that this will ever happen. That the fucking mayor of New York City is like, I'm gonna put electric fence around New York City.
And I'm gonna make New Jersey pay for it.
Yeah.
It was very strange to me how the country could turn into this within Peter Parker's lifetime. Like, I know we talk a lot about, the militarization of police or, whatever, but the scale...
This isn't like 2200. This is like, what, 2050?
Yeah.
And the scale to which this has become a dystopian police state is, and by, again, a mayor of New York City, is crazy.
And one thing that I think Dark Knight Returns does so much better too is Dark Knight Returns shows the politics of the country, where this is like just New York. So you're like, what is the rest of the world like?
Well, I was wondering, it's like, where are the other like
Yeah.
superheroes? I guess I had to just imagine they're not around for this.
They have a few hints at what's going on, but it's not enough to explain the way.
Or how about the whole American government would have had to change structure for this to be any of this to be constitutional? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't.
Well, maybe we're going in that direction, guys.
So now I'm going to need Sly to explain this to me. It cuts to a guy who looks just like the guy that in the news, the man who evolved his... I mean, he's not a real man.
The man who in real life evolved.
A computer model.
If humans evolved to survive car crashes, if you haven't seen this guy, please Google him because it's a ridiculous model. And it looks exactly like this guy. And they're like these two guys are eating steak in front of him, and this guy's just sitting there all lumpy. Now you say this is the Kingpin,
That's according to the Wikipedia page. It's Kingpin.
but they don't say that at all, and he doesn't show
Yeah, I
up
don't
again,
see
right?
any indication of that.
I know, but it's on the Wikipedia page. I'm assuming it's true, and it makes sense because he's like, "Oh, look at you, piece of shit! You're just sitting there. I'm eating all this shit, and you're just sitting there like a fat piece of shit."
Yeah, Kingpin used to be fat, now he's all like this weird deformed.
What's the point of this scene?
It's nothing.
Because it goes on for like 5 pages.
To show you the mayor's evil.
Oh yeah, it shows the mayor's evil.
Yeah, the mayor's evil, and he's not. But he's not even really evil. He's just stupid, like, as we see later on.
Spoilers, Sly.
Yeah.
Spoiling Sly again.
Spoiler: this character's not evil. He's just incompetent.
Like most people in life.
Yeah. So now Peter gets home. He brought flowers just like he promised. He's basically like, we don't see anybody. They're off camera.
Oh yeah, we have to mention that this book was made around a time when Peter was still married to Mary Jane. So this probably a lot of people would have assumed this will be Mary Jane he's talking to.
And
It is Mary Jane he's talking to.
I know, but like
Yeah.
I'm saying, like if you're reading comics now in 2016, you might think it's Carly Cooper or something. But in 2006, there was no one that could be besides Mary Jane.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's basically saying like, he says, I have to look for a new job. I quit. You know, he doesn't mention he got fired. And then he's just talking to himself, and then he starts screaming, "Say something!" And we don't see her face, but it's a very obviously younger Mary Jane across the table from him.
Yeah,
And he just says, "I'm sorry," and he like stares out the window, and it's really weird.
yeah.
I actually like the Mary Jane scene.
The Mary Jane parts are actually my favorite part of this book, by like a decent margin.
Because it shows his mental state.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's crazy.
yeah.
Not crazy. He can't let go of his dead wife.
He's hallucinating her. He's
Yeah, I'm gonna side with Sly on this.
like he's like talking to her. He's giving her flowers. I think he's crazy.
I feel like there's really cool ways to portray grief, like how, like even in The Boys, they did grief really well when that girl died. I feel like here it's like way too much in the realm of like he's actually crazy because he constantly goes to like when things are happening, he's going to other times and like he's getting younger, he's getting older.
Hallucinating. He's imagining things.
I'm in the middle of you guys because I think it's showing that he's crazy, but I also think it's done really well.
I think he like mentally broke when she died. Like he can't cope with reality anymore after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
But you're trying to argue like he's not crazy. He is crazy.
Okay, but not crazy in the way where we're talking about like the Joker and stuff.
I would maybe he's fucking imagining himself in like a white void.
He's buying flowers for his wife who is probably not there.
Okay, no, but that has a deep metaphor to it as we get to later.
I know, but like Darryl suggested, like he imagines himself he's not actually. He imagines himself being run over by a car when he's not, and stuff like that. He's imagining things that aren't there.
Okay, but people who go through traumatic events, who have severe PTSD, sometimes do imagine things like that.
But they imagine they're in a completely different area and they're like in the fucking
Yes.
Okay, why don't we wait until we get to the resolution of the Mary Jane hallucination plot to dissect what it means and if it's done well, because there's more reasons than just she's dead.
Okay, yeah.
So then there's more political nonsense. It doesn't matter.
He basically says the standard post 9/11 critique of, hey, we have to suspend freedoms and the electoral process to protect you from terrorists. Super terrorists are going to attack the city, so I have to make the web, and we're getting rid of outdated government traditions like elections.
Yeah.
Oh, and you have to get rid of all crosses and church bells because we're subtly talking about the removal of religion without saying it. A small price to pay for freedom.
For the record, though, the bells actually matter, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have an old man screaming at the cops that they're all pieces of shit and they're pissants and morons.
Monkeys, meat puppets, rejects, liars.
Yeah. And the cops, like, one cop goes to hassle him, and the other guy's like, hey, he's just an old man. And in the last episode, Phil said he's never seen in fiction a cop being like, hey, ease up.
Yeah.
So
that was actually pretty interesting.
Here it happens again.
Well, the other cop's also talking about beating a kid, so
Yeah.
it's not like it's...
Yeah.
The other cop's like fine with, like, he wants to hear more of the story of how he took down this kid's pants and slapped him with a paddle.
He's only trying to calm down because the old guy's interrupting his story about beating up the shit out of his kid.
Yeah, I want to hear more about this kid. Let this old man go.
Yeah.
And then we see another... I think this scene's pretty cool, too. It's Peter Parker saying, like, I had a dream that you were gone and I was a lonely old man. And he's talking to MJ and we still don't see her face. And they start kissing and he's like, she pulls me in and for the first time in 10 years, I taste sunshine. For the first time in years, everything's going to be... And then he wakes up alone.
And also, fun fact, the panel where he gets up from the bed, in the original release of this, they showed his penis, and there was a huge controversy where Marvel was like, okay, we have to edit that out.
Can't show Peter Parker's penis.
Why?
People get touchy around peepees.
Yeah.
I guess so.
People get touchy around peepees, says Darryl.
Yeah, because they fear people will get touchy around peepees.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like this scene, the framing of it's pretty good, but like this whole book always struck me as like it was trying really hard to pull emotions from
Me
you.
too. I agree.
Like it's like, isn't it so sad? And it's like we've already established that he's being haunted by her, and then they have another scene where it's like, look, it's like they're making love again, but no, he's actually all alone and feeble. And
Maybe
old.
it's just because I'm such a sucker for like any Peter and MJ.
I think my big beef with it is, but part of what Darryl suggested, that it's just so much, but it's so much because that's all we get for Peter is just pure grief. There's no nuance or anything to him besides this thing with Mary Jane. There's nothing else to this character. Every scene is just repeating this point.
My really big umbrage to it, the issue is that I haven't read a lot of Spider-Man comics, but Peter Parker is just not a character I see. Like, he can be a character that's troubled at times and has to make hard decisions, but like a character that's haunted by something is not something I associate Peter with. Like,
You really haven't read a lot of Spider-Man comics.
Okay.
That's kind of his whole thing.
Well, I know there's the stuff with like Gwen Stacy's death.
He's Peter Parker's just like, I'm guilty all the time about everything. So there's a knock on the door. That's what woke him up, and it's Old Man Hitler or J. Jonah Jameson. But he always looks kind of like Hitler. He really looks like the hate monger Hitler.
And this he's basically the Commissioner Gordon of this book, where he's so fucking old. Like, Peter looks fucking a million years old. Like, this guy looks like he should be dead.
Yeah, he's really like the Crypt Keeper.
When he first showed up, I didn't think he could be J. Jonah Jameson, because I'm like, well, if he was like, let's say 20 years older than Peter, he can't be alive.
Yeah, but like he looks like Peter looks like a walking corpse, and this guy looks like even more like a walking corpse. He looks like a character from Nemesis.
But he's super animated though.
Yeah. And they imply that there's some like bad blood between them, but JJJ's like really, really like happy and like, you're the best, come on, you and me, let's take this city back, after I sold the Daily Bugle. And Peter doesn't say anything and just closes the door on him after J. Jonah Jameson gives him a package.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I've been holding this package for you for a long time.
Bow chicka wow wow.
Yeah, I get touchy around peepees. And then as soon as he gets on the street, he just starts screaming that everyone's monkeys and liars again.
And you have this really ugly CGI car in the background.
Yeah.
That's when the art really like just shit.
And then you basically just get a mix of Peter like really, he's opening this package. It looks like he's like trying to open the hardest jar of pickles in the world, where he's like, ugh, and it's just like an envelope.
Yeah, but
and I get it's supposed to be emotional, but it looks physical.
Yeah.
Maybe that was his spider sense, because then cops are seeing J. Jonah Jameson, because he's hitting a car, so cops are like, old man, you have to stop.
That makes sense. So cops are gonna go like beat up J. Jonah Jameson.
The narrative is even there's a ring. Do you know that sound, the ringing in your ears, like the high octane pitched whine, like a siren? Doctors have a name for it. I'm not sure what they call it, but I have my own name.
That
and you
makes
see
sense.
like the little black
The old like Steve Ditko spider sense.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be that.
Okay, that makes sense. So J. Jonah Jameson's obviously trying to provoke these cops. He's smashing a cop car, then he takes his walker and he hits a cop in the face with it. And Peter opens the package and it's a camera. And it wrapped, and he's like, what does he want me to do with this? Like, I haven't taken pictures in years. And then next to the camera is a piece of fabric. And he drops the camera, and I think this is a really cool framed shot. The POV comes from inside the fabric, and everything's black except the shape of the Spider-Man eye lens looking up at Peter. And he starts like crying, and he's like, J. Jonah Jameson knew. Like, how did he not, why did he never tell us? Or me. Like, I don't know who else is. I guess me and Peter. And he is like having a crisis of conscience, like, what does he want me to do? And then meanwhile, Jonah's getting like beaten to death, basically, and this is just the worst page of the whole book, I think. Peter makes his debut in just the black Spider-Man mask and his boxers and cast and old man socks.
But so long, like if he pulled them up, they would go past his knees.
Yeah, they're like knee high.
He looks like he's wearing like jester shoes.
Yeah.
And lightning strikes just like in The Dark Knight Returns, except instead of like a silhouette, it's just a naked old man.
Yeah.
And
with a mask.
Yeah, and then he does crazy kung fu and beats all the cops up.
And I also think that, like he says in the narration, like he's not there anymore. Like Spider-Man takes over. Like
because they're trying to make it like Spider-Man's like Batman, even though that's not how the character is at all.
Yeah,
because he tries to apply so much of what works with Batman to Spider-Man, where Batman basically he suggests that Spider-Man is a true identity, his true self, and like Peter's like his mask, which is the exact opposite of Spider-Man.
So then he is beating up this cop and flashing back to when he was Spider-Man, he threw somebody off a building and killed him. And do they ever really explain why he did that?
No,
right? He says, "You murderer," and he throws...
I was wondering, I'm like, did he kill Mary Jane?
But it's revealed, no. And then it just goes...
No, he did.
Well, I mean, like...
Okay, yeah. And in this past world, the guy in the mask is not a cop, he's a criminal.
Yeah, and then there's just a compilation of Peter feeling guilty about Aunt May and Mary Jane and Uncle Ben, and then J. Jonah Jameson, but now is really old. And... he's like, I had to sell the paper because I knew you were Spider-Man and I couldn't tell the truth. So, like, you made me a liar because of the stuff I said about Spider-Man. And can I count on you? The city needs you. And Spider-Man just punches him in the face and leaves him all bloody in the alley. And that's the end of issue 1.
I think Jameson is definitely, you can argue that he's a crazy man because he actually walks around the city yelling, liars, thieves, crooked.
But Jameson's a real hero of the story because he's the one that fucking causes everything.
He rants a lot, but he has the right idea. Like, he is, like Sly said, he is the hero of the story, whereas, like, Peter Parker is more of a show up at the last minute to do the right
thing.
He's a comatose case for most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just mean, like, he just rants a lot.
Almost everyone's story feels crazy, so we're going to argue one's more crazy than the other.
Well, you have to be crazy to want to live here.
Yeah. So much of this book is just in like the setup and how dumb the world is. So I assume we're gonna spend less time on the rest of it. I fucking hope so.
We always say that and we never do. Part 2 is Phil.
Yep. So the cover for this one is people that I didn't really recognize.
It's Sinister Six: Electro, Sandman, Craven the Hunter, Scorpion,
Mysterio, and nobody else. That's 5.
Basically, the Spider-Man's like. The villain, Spider-Man's villain team in the regular.
I know because I had the NES game.
That's actually the first time I heard Sinister Six was when you brought that game, Darryl. So they're all just like stabbing and beating Spider-Man, and then it's a pretty cool cover actually. And then so we start with as we just said about J. Jonah Jameson. J. Jonah Jameson ranting and yelling, "Liars, convicts, sinners, wake up!" He sounds like one of those. Guys in the New York City
repent or die, the end is nigh.
In the subway in New York City where they're just yelling the true devils are among us and things like that. And we go back to the nursery rhyme thing, which is a little bit late. That should have been resolved in issue 1. Poor writing there. And they talk about again how nursery rhymes are warnings. And
to be fair to the book, like it consistently keeps talking about nursery rhymes throughout. Like in the last issue, they were talking about nursery rhymes, like the guy that Peter threw off the building, that he was like a yolk-filled broken body.
Yeah, and they say like Hickory Dickory Dock was him slowly snapping.
Well, again, Peter hasn't resolved any of his inner turmoil.
But do they ever mention nursery rhymes again?
No,
because that's what I was thinking. If it was a theme throughout the story, that's one thing. But to just start out issue 1 and then start out issue 2 with it and then never again.
Yeah, it switches gears.
Yeah, that felt weird.
And I have to point out that so basically Jonah Jameson's handing out newspapers now, and he's competing with the Reign's mainstream Daily Bugle newspaper.
Yeah, and in this world, of course, newspapers are illegal when they're not the Reign.
Yeah.
So
I just want to point out it's just weird to imagine in 2006 there was this writer was still like, and like several years from now newspapers will still be even read by people, much less competing.
Yeah, 2006 is late enough for like he should have had like a blog.
I think it's because he's so determined to make it like Dark Knight Returns which was written at a time when newspapers were relevant.
Yeah, that's true.
So he's handing out newspapers that are illegal that say, Spider-Man's back. And so, of course, we cut to the...
And it's funny, too, because it's the picture of Spider-Man in his underwear. So it's not like the most riveting...
Yeah, just to remind you how gross that was. And the news basically just says, like, papers are illegal.
Yeah. And, old people are funny. J. Jonah Jameson's crazy, aren't they? And they're like, ha ha ha. Then we go to the mayor, and the mayor's incensed by this. He's like, he's a curse old codger. And his aide, who seems to be important now because he's telling him what to do, says, we must accelerate the web and make it tonight. And then they go to the vault.
To catch the spider, you must first release some flies.
Which is wrong. And that's like not how nature works, just so you know. And then...
Hey, you catch more spiders with flies, right? That's the phrase?
Yeah.
Okay. So they go to the vault, that's a V in the elevator. Pretty cool that everyone can just go there. And they make a really cool line, with great responsibility comes great power.
Also, we start getting our second symbolism of they start referencing, like, Greek stories.
It's, like, never fully realized.
It's no coincidence. The Olympus Towers. Because it's both, like, nursery rhymes and, like, Greek tragedies.
Yeah, but, like, they don't do enough with that either to make it relevant. They're, like, so the mayor's palace / city hall is called Olympus Towers, but they don't really do much with Mount Olympus at all.
They just mention it. They name drop it. They're like, "Did you know this?"
Well, all that stuff. Like I feel like that's why I hate this book, because I feel all that stuff is. It does all this stuff that good books have done in the past. So it's things like, oh, I must put a nursery rhyme. That's clever, right? There's probably references like Olympus and all these allusions to the story, but it doesn't do anything of them. It just
they don't have any like symbolism in the story.
Yeah, it just feels like this is what a story like this should do. So since I'm ripping them off, I should make it like that.
Yeah.
Do you want to say that line that you were saying before I interrupted?
The great power, with great responsibility comes great power.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I thought that was cute.
They just take the Spider-Man line and they invert it, and guess what? It's not the first time or the last time.
Yeah.
It is the first time. It's not the last time.
Ironically, they don't understand the point of that line, even though they use it all the time.
Yeah, it's really weird how they just keep using it too. But anyway, they go down to the vault, and we see the Sinner Six, not the Sinister Six,
which I find stupid because like. They existed as a Sinister Six, so why don't you just call them the Sinister Six?
Yeah.
Like, this is not a new team, like an alternate
Because
universe.
you're making it, like, darker. Like, I thought this was, like, a middle school call of re-emergence of the Sinister Six. They'd be like, the Sinner Six.
Sinister is a scarier word.
Yeah. And the idea is here they can repent, and by doing this act, they can be free of the city.
Oh, okay.
They can be free if they kill Spider-Man, presumably. But either way, you have the Sinister Six as old men now, and they've been watching Spider-Man footage. I don't know who was recording, but and then we have another middle school line because they say the web will become a giant cage trapping us with them, and then the mayor's aide says, "You needn't fear that, sir. There's a weapon that has conquered both devils and gods alike: science." Just such a shitty line. Like it's really.
I thought you loved this book, Phil.
I didn't love it. I said it wasn't bad.
It's pretty bad.
We'll keep going.
Yeah.
It's fine if he thinks it's all right. It does have its merits at parts.
Yeah,
which we just haven't hit any of them yet.
It never dips to the levels of a lot of the other books.
I agree.
We've read.
Yeah, it's not blatantly offensive because it says PG-13.
The science they talk about is basically the Sinister Six has bombs in them, and if they ever try and go against the city, they'll blow them up.
Hey, cool! It's a Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
You should call them the Suicide Six. Am I right?
And basically, what they have to do is kill Spider-Man, or they get blown up, and then if they kill him, they can leave. Great. So we go back to the city streets. The girl from the first scene is reading a newspaper, which is illegal. So the cops are like, "Fuck you," and they backhand her. And this little kid comes out of the alley, and he's like, "Hey, little girl, want to come into an alley? I have friends or something."
I have candy.
It's obviously setting up like a resistance kind of thing.
Well, I mentioned too, of course they say, you're lucky we don't, to the girl, you're lucky we don't throw your scrawny butt in jail. Maybe spend some time in there with you, because you always have to make rape illusions.
Yeah.
Cool.
And she says, "This is a free country," which is absurd for people to still think that in this world. And then we go back to Peter Parker now, and he's packing, because he's like, "Shit, I've been found out. Gotta go," and he's packing up.
Gotta go fast.
Yeah, gotta go fast. He's asking Mary Jane, like, "Are you done packing yet? Do you need help packing? What are you waiting for? It's not safe." He definitely is senile.
Yeah.
Because as he starts shaving, he's just cutting himself and just laying, like, bleeding, looking at Mary Jane.
You're the one that was arguing he wasn't. No, fuck you.
He was saying he's not crazy as the Joker is crazy.
Joker's like the ultimate crazy. You can't say, it's like saying, this is as bad as I'm funny. Yes, it's not as bad as the worst thing ever.
You must be poor because you're not Bill Gates.
Yeah.
I was thinking of it more when you said he was crazy, like, this is like
Yeah. So when you think when I say somebody's crazy, you think I mean there's the Joker? Yes, Phil. Okay.
I just mean like a person could be easily driven to this.
But that doesn't make him not crazy.
No, I'm just saying that it's not like he's completely psychotic. He has severe PTSD and he's going.
Well, most people with mental issues are like this. They're more they're more dangerous to themselves than to others.
Yeah, but in comics they're not. They're all complete psychopaths.
Look at Mr. Stigma Phil over here. Let's go.
No, I'm saying
He's not crazy. Only crazy people will hurt people. Like the Joker. If you're crazy, you're like the Joker.
Yeah. No. Okay.
So we go back to this alley. This girl's following this kid. There's a church at the end in a random alley. A church door with no cross or something.
It had to be taken down.
Yeah.
So she enters the church, and who is the priest of this church? J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh, yeah, I have to point out, J. Jonah Jameson was the Commissioner Gordon, and I'm not just saying that just to be like half-ass these connections to Dark Knight Returns. Just like Dark Knight Returns had primarily three main characters. You had Carrie Kelly, you had Commissioner Gordon, you had Bruce Wayne. Here you have J. Jonah Jameson, the old guy. You have Peter Parker, the main character, and you have this kid who becomes a vigilante too. So this is a Carrie Kelly of this book.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And he basically is leading like this resistance thing where he says, your grandparents got scared and locked you up in the city. They turned this into a police state. The web is going to...
Yeah, he's really acting like a crazy prophet. And from that mountain, I watched them construct a giant tower to watch you. And from that mountain, I watched them create a door at the top of the tower.
Yeah.
It was then I knew I had to come back. If the web is activated, this cage will become a physical force.
I actually like the way they take the crazy prophet thing and turn it into like it's actual political warnings, not just crazy.
I like the idea, but I've seen it done better before.
You're doing the same thing Phil did. We're like, oh, one thing did it better, so it's bad.
Shit, you're right.
So basically, the little kid who convinces the girl to come down the alley is like, "Hey, you came," and
he's a master hacker.
Yeah.
J. Jonah Jameson is like, "Hey, kid, hack the government." And now all of a sudden, Daily Bugle News turns off the government news, and it switches to J. Jonah Jameson saying, "Liars, thieves, and liars! Wake up, look up!" And everyone's like,
does it to every electronic device with an LCD screen, like ATMs.
Yeah.
People's phones.
And it's still so it hacks everything, and he still uses the fucking picture of naked old man Spidey.
That's what I love, because it's not a rousing thing to get you to stand against the government. You're like, it's a naked guy with a Spider-Man mask.
that's part of his thing though, because he's not saying like join Spider-Man. He's saying there's a civilian hiding Spider-Man at this address.
Yeah.
To try to get everyone to go and see like what the hell's going on.
Just like when in V for Vendetta, they're like, meet us at this place on this day. Except now that day is now, and so all these people go to this place.
They go and they're like, "What's going on?" And then the police are there and they're like, "Break it up." And all of a sudden we see someone putting in a cassette into a jukebox, and music starts playing.
I've read a lot of Spider-Man. When the fuck is this guy from?
Do you guys know him? Is he a real character?
He's a villain called the Hypno Hustler. Yes. I actually knew this guy, but
I knew him personally.
I read so much fucking Spider-Man in my life. I thought this guy was Rocket Racer for a second, who's another lame black Spider-Man villain. But no, it's Hypno Hustler, a guy I forgot existed until now.
Yeah, so basically the point is everyone watches the cops murder another quote-unquote super...
And the only black guy in the story, too. He just showed up just to die.
Very good point. That's a good point that, like, we're in New York City and there's only white people.
And the only black guy in the story, he just shows up to be a joke. Like, I'm a Hypno Hustler, and then he gets shot.
And then he gets murdered.
So, for some reason, this is supposed to be the emotional, like, the cops killed somebody. But it's this fucking character that just showed up just to dance.
More importantly, do you think these people have not seen the cops beat and shoot people in the street? The way they act?
Two, J. Jonah Jameson forces all the children to watch, and he's smiling while he says it.
Yeah, like, it reminds me of, like, the scene in the V for Vendetta movie when it's slow-mo and that one kid that's graffitiing gets killed. But having a child get killed is a lot more of, like, a statement than this character that we just saw who's just dancing like a... Like,
no, but
what?
They bring up the fact that masks are important because masks are banned. And, he's trying to get the kids to put on the masks and become,
and only cops are allowed to wear masks.
They couldn't have a better fucking... Spider-Man character
than Hypno Hustler?
Like, I'm going to point out a very large omission in the story. They leave out a huge Spider-Man character, but they have Hypno Hustler. Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No Green Goblin, but...
Fuck, I was going to say that. Fuck you. I'll save it for later. It's a fucking huge thing, because considering who the main villain of the story is.
Yeah, so...
The true arch nemesis of Spider-Man, not Green Goblin. We'll see.
we come back to Peter. Everyone's watching this guy get shot. Peter's like, we gotta go. He's yelling at Mary Jane again. And then he looks outside and he's like, oh, Hypno Hustler's dead. And yeah.
Sweet. I was waiting for that for 40 fucking years.
And then the cops shoot a fucking RPG at his window, which is again excessive. That's why I can't imagine that this is a shock to the police, to the population, that the police use excessive force. Yeah. Like they shoot a rocket at an apartment building. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they even had told them why. They're just like, yeah, they're at this place, and the cops are like, well, we better blow it up.
Well, they said civilian hides masked man. That's enough.
Yeah, I guess.
And okay, so Peter basically comes out of the explosion in his costume.
This is my favorite scene in the whole book, I think.
Really?
Cause like when Phil's, like we suggested that he was hallucinating, seeing stuff he wasn't. So basically, he basically sees like in a big white void, and he sees a car coming towards him, and he's like, "Oh, my wife's injured. Come help me!" But the car just runs him over, and basically, as he's flying backwards, his injured corpse. It basically forms into the silhouette of Spider-Man jumping forward towards the cops, and I think that's a very cool image.
The Black Spider-Man too.
Yeah. And I even like the narration. Like, I don't know how the costume got under my clothes. Old habits. I don't remember putting on the mask. I never do. But the sound is always the same. And he pops out going woohoo, and somehow this is pretty crazy. He lands into like a sea of cops, and I mean like if you estimate like 50 to 100 with
it
like,
looks like a zombie movie.
Yeah, they like have like a serious arms too, and he's just in the middle of them, just like
their legs are pretty good too, Phil.
Fuck you. He's basically spinning through the crowd, like kicking the shit out of cops. I guess they don't want to shoot into the crowd of their fellow cops, so
but they'll shoot a rocket into an apartment building.
Yeah, and he's telling jokes as he beats the shit out of these cops, and J. Jonah Jameson is like, all according to Kikaku. And
we have to talk about this because like Phil likes this idea and I don't, because like this seems like another part of Peter's madness, that he's cracking jokes in the middle of this very dark story. Because
I think that's Spider-Man though. He's always like really upset, and the only time he's happy and alive is when he's in the costume.
That's not true. He's Peter Parker is the real character. Spider-Man is usually...
No, I know, but he uses the Spider-Man mask to mask his insecurities, and is always like cracking jokes when Peter Parker never would do that.
But stories like this, like there are many dark Spider-Man stories. Peter Parker doesn't crack jokes when somebody just got shot.
That's true.
He also hasn't been Spider-Man though in 40 years or something.
I know, but like this is a fucking like this seems like more of a manifestation of his mental illness, that he's cracking jokes in the middle of this.
All right, I could dig that he has this like that he has this like compartmentalized part of his mind, which is me, young Spider-Man, and he just went into that completely.
Yeah, so I feel that's more of a manifestation of that.
Okay, I can get behind that. And it's kind of crazy that J. Jonah Jameson's like, this is all according to plan, because like, how could it really be according to plan?
I don't know.
He's Nemesis.
Yeah. Okay.
And no, not nearly.
Yeah, it's not.
He's not nearly good enough.
This story is better written than Nemesis.
It definitely is.
Yeah, it definitely is.
I agree.
What's important about the scene too is, I guess this is J. Jonah Jameson's plan, is that now everyone who's hacked and watching the screen now sees Spider-Man kicking the shit out of the Rain cops. So you now all of a sudden the city, because again this is some weird like autonomous New York City that gets to see that the cops can actually be beaten, I guess, by men in masks. Yeah. And he starts yelling, "Liars, crooks! Are you watching?" And then we find out that the kid who's hacking, the hacker kid.
Before that, I just wanted to point out that the cops start beating up J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh yeah.
And then the civilians like, "What are you doing? That's an old man you're beating on." Like you said before, it's like, how have they not seen this when it's like kids are beaten?
Yeah. I think it is a cool idea though, that the fact that once fighting breaks out, people's adrenaline gets kicked in, and they really do. People are much more quick to get into a fight once fighting happens.
True.
And they do mention how like it rubs that primal thing inside us that makes you feel strong.
It sure rubs my primal thing.
Fuck you. Now that they watch cops getting beaten up, and they're like, I can be part of this too. It is weird how it ever escalated to this point. It's kind of
this story seems too dark to have like this feeling of that's the man rising up and being this injustice and stuff.
Yeah, because they're like 20 years past that here.
Yeah.
And speaking about it, yeah.
Okay, so speaking of how dark it is, this little kid's like, I'm being traced.
The hacker kid.
And then, like, fucking a million comic books I've read, he gets a knife through his, like a sword through his back.
Did Jeff Johns write this?
Yeah. Jeff Johns is one of my favorite writers, and he uses this in every story.
And basically, we just get to see the Sinister Six in action. Like Electro or Static Shock or whoever he is just like...
Oh, because he was black in the movies, you're comparing Static Shock, you're racist?
No, I only know a few electric characters.
I never thought about that they made him black because he had electric powers.
Because like Sonya was like, we have an electric character and Marvel didn't make him black. That's obviously wrong. We have to correct that.
When was Electro ever in a Spider-Man movie?
Jamie Foxx played him.
Let me see Spider-Man 2.
I didn't see that one.
The worst Spider-Man movie.
Spider-Man 3? Alright, anyway.
It's worse than Spider-Man 3.
Basically, Spider-Man's like, oh, he's kicking the shit out of the cops, but then the Sinister Six show up and they kick the shit out of him. And J. Jonah Jameson is like, show them, Parker! And he doesn't. He just gets stabbed a lot.
Yeah.
This is really crazy. He gets stabbed a lot. The little girl's like, oh, he's just an old man and weak like the rest of us. She runs away crying.
Because his mask is torn off.
Yep. They realize, like, oh, he's now he's just like us, piece of shit, weak, subservient to the man. And the Sinister Six really just beat the shit out of him. And then they talk about bringing up the Greek stuff again, Deus Ex Machina, and how sometimes a device would come and save the hero, and they're like, let's do that now. So these like metal Dr. Octopus-looking arms.
They're obviously Dr. Octopus's
Yeah.
arms. You see him in the background.
It looks like Dr. Octopus has come to save Peter Parker, basically.
Yeah, and it picks him out of the crowd. Somehow the Sinister Six just are like, oh, and they just let it happen. And
then, like E.T. on a bicycle, we see his silhouette on the moon.
I really like, this is the one single frame.
I like this page a lot.
I like this
Me
the
too.
most out of the whole book.
I actually love this concept, too, because the story doesn't have Green Goblin like Ryan spoiled. But if there's any villain who is second biggest Spider-Man villain, it's definitely Dr. Octopus. And one thing he's always done, he saved Peter Parker several times. Basically, like, no one kills you but me, Peter Parker, basically. Like, and this is very reminiscent of that. This feels very true to Dr. Octopus's character.
And I do love how they do reference that into when he's talking about Deus Ex Machina. He says the hero rise and he gets brought to the gods to be judged, and he's like, I'm gonna go. I was judged a long time ago, and I'm gonna go meet her now. And then we cut into the news is like, oh, terrorists blew up an apartment building and blah blah blah. The web is up. Hey guys, freedom isn't free or something.
Yeah.
And
Freedom isn't free!
He says that.
Yep. And then we get to where Peter was brought. I skipped a bunch of shit. And then
There's all a bunch of shit.
Peter gets dropped off, bloodied and beaten and stabbed in front of Mary Jane's grave. And Aunt May and Uncle Ben. And that's where the issue ends.
Yeah, because Mary Jane didn't have her own family, so she was buried with Peter's family, I guess.
That's a good point.
They might have bought plots together, and I guess they were young when they died. That's kind of weird to buy grave plots when you're so young.
It sounds like someone smashing some plots together in this book.
Yeah. Alright, so guys, we've been a little long this one, so we're going to pause here on issue 2.
Aw, but I want to know what happens.
Yeah, we just can't stop talking about this book. It's just so good.
Out of all the fucking books, this is the one we can't shut up about, but yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just so interested.
Find out what book Divisive Issues won't shut up about.
God, even this outro is taking forever.
Find out who's a fucking fascist next time on Divisive Issues.
And also, even though this is the halfway point of this story, still want to mention, rate, review, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and SoundCloud, and tweet at us, Divisive Issues, and Facebook and email, all that stuff.
As a wise man once said, it really does help. You should do that stuff.
Darryl stuff.
Yep.
And so, yeah, thanks for listening to part 1. I've been Hitler Jonah Jameson.
I've been Spider-Man's censored testicles.
Shit. I can't beat that one.
And I've been Sinner 6.
Staying continuity.
Itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sunshine and dried up all the rain. And itsy bitsy spider